where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
A task force has been meeting down at the Marble Palace for the last couple of days. Here with a Marble Palace update, somebody who has attended both of those meetings yesterday and today, we have Mr. Josh Waters from Political Strategies back on the program. Josh, thanks again for coming on.
Hey, Paul. How's it going?
It's going good. And I also want to thank you again for guest hosting the program on Friday. I got to listen to a little bit of it off and on. I was barbecuing for a family event, and I really enjoyed it. And so I just want to say thank you.
Oh, yeah. It was an honor to step in for you. Hopefully I didn't scare off too many of your listeners, and they're still tuning in today.
Well, I think we're doing good. So I don't think you have anything to worry about there. So, Josh, I've spoken with you a little bit yesterday, just you and me, about what happened at the tax force, as I'm starting to call it, because I feel like they really want to raise revenue. And we do have a few articles out in the Gazette about this, that the consultant, Randy Bauer, they're wanting now to sift through sales tax exemptions. What can you tell us about yesterday? Let's start with what they talked about yesterday, and then let's talk about what they talked about today. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, yesterday was basically all about sales and use tax, and then specifically exemptions and what the cost of those were. So, they started off very basic, talking generally about sales tax and, the rate in Arkansas, which we know is 6.5%. He also mentioned about how the state and local combined sales tax rate in Arkansas is third highest in the nation. That's a tax foundation statistic there. And so they really went through about the sales tax rates and how those compare to other states. And then they did get into some of the sales tax exemptions. And that was really, I think coming in what a lot of the members of the task force were interested in, kind of knowing the value of what those were. And so they actually had some data from 2011 about the cost or how much revenue is not taken in because of those exemptions that they would take in if they weren't in place. And so Josh, that number was $1.4 billion.
Did anybody
sales tax exemptions.
Did anybody say, "Hey, why don't we have any current data?" I mean, that's like 6 or 7 years ago. Like, what's wrong? Why don't we have current data?
Yeah, that came up actually probably maybe 2 or 3 times during the day. Some of the data that was shown during the presentation was pretty old. And so they did request, the task force did request that they redo those numbers and update those. So I know that's something DFNA, I guess working with the Randy Bauer and the consultants will work on, trying to get some newer data. And then also of those exemptions, what can they actually, do with those numbers? Because some of the exemptions are under the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution or the Arkansas Constitution. So it's not like they can get all that $1.4 billion in revenue that they're not getting. But going back to your point in your question, there was several instances where the data seemed kind of old, or they needed more data or more information, more dollar figures they can assign to this. So that's something the way they explained it was there'd be a written memo sent to the task force members following up on questions from the last 2 days of meetings. So hopefully we can get a copy of that report and they can address those questions.
I'm reading here in the Gazette article about this particular task force meeting. They mentioned the chairman, the governor's nephew, several times, Senator Jim Hendren, also the majority leader in the Senate. And it seems like he wants a study done. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. He wants a study done as to what the scenario would be if they eliminated all exemptions on the sales tax, and then how much money would they get, and then how much money could they then cut income taxes? He's quoted in the newspaper saying, quote, "But I just wanted to know myself, if you really wanted to go for it and say we're eliminating all sales tax exemptions, what would your tax code look like? You can see you could cut in half," he said. It was just really an exercise in math to let folks see that even $100 million isn't going to move the needle much on the top rate. Moving down the top rate takes a lot of dollars, is what he says. What are your thoughts on Senator Jim Hendren and what you heard him say in person yesterday?
To do something about them, you not only may make
Yeah,
them
well,
worse,
honestly, that was probably one of the better portions of yesterday's meeting. You know, and one of the few times I've heard, okay, if we're going to
I think it's
get all
time
this
we
new
ask ourselves
revenue,
if
how
we
much
still
can
know the
reduce
freedoms
rates
that were
by?
intended
And
for us
so
by the
before we
founding
broke
fathers.
for lunch,
We lose freedom here. There's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. My name is Paul, and you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here, and if you want to help us do that, one of the ways you can do that is to call us or text us. The number 870-275-9799. Or, again, sound off on our Facebook Live feed as well as YouTube. And you could also watch us at paulharrell.com. So feel free to do all that. Now, I was just giving the Facebook audience a little bit of, I guess, a preview of what we're going to be talking about here in this first segment. I think if we saw anything in the last election cycle, specifically with the presidential election cycle, is that it was a battle of polls, right? It's pretty one-sided, though. It's a pretty one-sided battle. I mean, most of the polls were completely wrong, you know. The last election cycle, or I guess yesterday was the anniversary, right? And you heard, and on a lot of the national outlets, you know, you were hearing the montages and the shock and the awe. And one of those montages, you would hear them talk about how Hillary was leading in Florida. Hillary was leading, according to the polls, leading in Florida. Hillary was leading in North Carolina. Hillary was leading in Ohio. Hillary was, you know, and they just go on and on and on and on and on. Of course, election night comes and, you know, Donald Trump's the next president of the United States. So the polls, the polls were all wrong. The American people were, the silent majority is what's called. Anyway, there is, but if you go back further than that, and I'm going to bring this down to an Arkansas flair here in a minute, but if you go back further than that, go back to 2012, that really was a battle of poll. You had one foray after another. Mitt Romney, Obama, Mitt Romney, Obama. There were several polls that just kept finding Obama was up. And so then you had people starting writing articles saying, you know what, I think these polling, I think they are actually not correct here. I think there's some bias in their poll numbers and everything else. And, of course, that's why nobody would criticize the polls this time that showed Hillary was up so much. It really just goes to show that in a lot of ways, it is it's a crapshoot. I mean, it depends on, who are you calling, what your sample really is and everything else. Now, that doesn't mean that polls aren't a useful tool. It doesn't mean that you can't get some data out of there that's very interesting. But occasionally there is, I mean, there are occurrences where you have one poll that's bad for a candidate, and then you get this other poll right afterwards, I don't know, almost a week later, that is good for the candidate. Now, in this case, you very rarely get a poll that's bad for a candidate and then another poll that directly contradicts. I mean, almost like the complete opposite headline of what you were reading last week. You very rarely, get one that is so precise and such a targeted attack of precision trying to combat the narrative. Now, if we go back to let's go to a flashback first. Joe, can you take me to Talk Business and Politics and Hendricks College poll? This was 1 week ago today. Poll numbers out, Asa Hutchinson below 50%. If you scroll down, this is where we got our numbers where Asa had lost 17 points among Republicans from April, according to the same poll, April to now. But here is the interesting part, because this is what also made a part of the article. You see right here, quote, and this is the analysis from Dr. Jay Barth, professor of political science at Hendricks College. He writes, importantly, the governor is running a full 20% behind President Trump among Arkansas Republicans at 59% approval. Now, again, he lost 17 points, okay, from April to now among Republicans, and Donald Trump was sitting at 79% approval according to the current poll. Hutchinson all the way back to 59% among Republicans. Now, all that being said, this wasn't good. So what did people do the next day? Well, Asa Hutchinson supporters went out and they started tweeting and Facebook posting a poll that said that Asa Hutchinson is the third most liked governor in all of the country. And you saw that everywhere. And then, of course, we exposed that on Twitter. There were these weird Saudi Arabian Uber bots that were retweeting Asa's tweet. Even some folks at KARK noticed it and how weird it was. Or not KARK, producers in the mainstream media here in Arkansas, they noticed it and how strange that it was. We showed you all of that. It's very weird. 90 retweets, and most of them are from people who already, they're clearly bots. They've been around since September and already have tweeted September of this year, and they've already tweeted 8,000 times. It just doesn't happen like that. So, that's what they did. And almost now, a week later, yesterday, this is when the news came out, another poll, not Talk Business and Politics in Hendricks College, but a new poll from the University of Arkansas, the Arkansas poll, as it's called. Now, think about this. This headline essentially contradicts both of the narratives that Asa Hutchinson was uncomfortable with last week. The headline from the Arkansas poll, Frank E. Lockwood, the Democrat Gazette, headline, Trump's at 47% in annual Arkansas poll, approval at 62% for Hutchinson. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is a point-for-point headline rebuke of any of the negative press that you might have heard last week. On two fronts. The headline from Talk Business and Politics is that Asa Hutchinson was below 50% overall. Well, now overall, he's at 62% approval. Now, that includes Democrats, Independents, Republicans, and people who aren't sure what they are or choose not to divulge what they are.
And that's where the big difference is here, because if you have only Republicans answering, a lot of Republicans have a problem with Asa Hutchinson.
And I didn't see that in the breakdown. I looked. It does show you what the breakdown of Republican, Democrat. This does favor Republicans, I think by 9 points off the top of my head, in the polling, but it doesn't. I didn't see where it said, "Hey, among Republicans, this is the breakdown and approval, disapproval."
Yeah, but among this is the entire state, so you get majority Democrats that are loving what
Asa Hutchinson is doing. Yeah.
Exactly, and then you get a minority of Republicans who like what Asa is doing. And that gets them up to 60-something%.
Right, and this is all about perception, not necessarily getting into the results. It was actually pretty hard to find the actual results of the 2017 Arkansas poll. Like like, you know what I'm saying, line by line. You have to go over to the, I believe, the University of Arkansas website. You have to find it. I mean, you can Google the Arkansas poll, but even once you get there, the main statistic that they were showing was the support in Arkansas for same-sex marriage and how that's changed. And it's like, well, that's not why I'm here. I'm here for ACE's approval numbers. But anyway, but this is fascinating. So it's a complete reversal. You see it's how a reversal? I mean, go back to the Talk Business and Politics article real quick. Quote, importantly, governor is running a full 20 points behind Trump. Uh-oh. Back to the new article. Don't worry. Donald Trump's only at 47% overall. According to the new poll, Ace is at 62%. Folks, this is a battle of polls. I mean, that's what it is. This is a battle of perception. And, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Talk Business and Politics and Hendricks College poll is gospel, right? And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that poll is, okay, 100% accurate. I do think it's fascinating because Talk Business and Politics and Hendricks College, they do this poll 3 times a year or so. And so you can compare the trend, I mean, that is interesting. You can also go back and compare the Arkansas poll trend from the years that they do it every year. But so I'm not going to sit here and say, but the idea that this is not in some way coordinated, at least the headlines are coordinated. I'm not saying that the releasing of the poll is. I'm not saying the poll's rigged. It wouldn't surprise me if it is, but I'm not saying that it is. All I'm saying is they are in many ways desperately trying to combat the narrative from last week that showed Asa had lost 17 points among Republicans since April, and that Asa was polling 20 points behind among Republicans President Donald Trump in approval rating. And now we have, and the key is here, you can say, okay, well, the new poll has got more Republicans and Democrats and that sort of thing. You can say all that you want, but in a primary, this is going to be a battle of Republicans. Sure, Democrats could cross over and vote in a Republican primary to keep Asa alive. And if Asa does indeed have a primary challenger, Jan Morgan has formed the exploratory committee. If she does actually launch a campaign, we would expect that Democrats would be recruited by the Hutchinson administration to come in the primary and vote for him. That is obviously going to happen because Asa Hutchinson is not a true conservative, right? The Democrats, the liberals, the progressives, the big money interests in this state are still on board the Hutchinson bandwagon. They're still backing him. So they would do everything they could to make sure he gets past that primary, and Arkansas doesn't have a closed primary process. We have an open primary process, which doesn't make any sense to me, but that is a battle for another time. We would be seeing some real panic if Asa Hutchinson had if the Republican Party was a closed primary. Matter of fact, you probably would already have had other challengers already announced if it was a closed primary. I mean, that's something to certainly consider. I mean, why would you want people who aren't Republicans to decide who the Republican nominee is? If we are going to talk about, well, this is a group that identifies with this specific platform. I'm not a registered Republican, but if they had closed Republican primaries, I would go register as a Republican. I would. So that the party, the people who most identify with the platform would be able to decide who exactly they want to represent them in whatever office we're talking about. But anyway, so yeah, that it directly contradicts the narrative from last week. They are really, and listen, let me just say this. I have an indirect source. Well, no, so I have a source that is suspicious, and this just confirms what I said. This is really just confirming what I said last week. Last week, I told you, after the Talk Business and Politics and Hendricks College poll came out showing that Asa had lost 17 percentage points among Republicans and was trailing Donald Trump by 20 points among Republicans, that based on the reaction of the next day when they posted that ridiculous national story about how he's the third most popular governor in the country, that they have to have internal polling data that is much, much worse than the Talk Business and Politics and Hendrix College numbers. They've got to have internal polling data that shows that he is doing terrible. That it's much worse than, what was he at? 59% among Republicans' approval, according to Talk Business and Politics. And again, he lost 17 points. I now, through the grapevine, I'm not the only one that thinks that. There are people down in Little Rock speculating in the know that they believe that as well, that they believe that what's going on right now, the offensive, what they perceive as offensive, it's more defensive. They're so defensive, that's why they're trying to get Jan Morgan to, get disinvited from county committees and things like that, a potential challenger to Asa, that this is just evidence that they have, that they're afraid of you. They're afraid of you. You are discovering the truth, and it's not just Asa. It's also anybody that's backing Asa. They're worried because they know the people. And let me tell you something. If a Donald Trump type election were to actually happen again, meaning what people need to understand, if you haven't heard this, please hear it again. When Donald Trump ran in Arkansas in the primary last year, okay, there were people who came out and voted in that Republican primary for Donald Trump over Ted Cruz. Now, Ted Cruz did actually do, I think, what did he get, 30%? But there were people who came out and voted for Donald Trump from Arkansas who had not participated in a very long time, or maybe it was the first time that they had participated in the voting process. It was those people that gave Donald Trump, I believe, the 40+% that he needed to secure Arkansas, majority of Arkansas's delegates. So keep that in mind. And if you don't think the establishment knows that, if you don't think the big money interests that are backing Asa, that are so thankful that Asa Hutchinson exists, and what I mean by that is, the big money interests know that there was no way they were going to be able to support a Democrat anymore because the people had had enough of Democrats here in Arkansas. But the systems and the bureaucracies and the way things are done that the Democrats put in place and have been here for 138 years, they've been building this big government machine for 138 years. They wanted it to stay the way it was. Okay, they wanted associations to still mean something, and I'm friends with this person, and I'm friends with that person. So, they didn't want anybody to come in and actually reform. And so here's Asa Hutchinson. Here is a Clinton Republican from Arkansas, right? When you look at what he did, I know we got to go, but they were very grateful. Here's a guy, he's got an R next to his name. We can support him. He'll win, and he will make sure nothing really significant changes in the state of Arkansas. That is the game here. That's the game. And what I really believe this. Let me say this again. The polling is fascinating. The only real poll that counts is an election. And if this continues, if Jan Morgan actually does run, okay, the phrase that I want everybody to start thinking about is consent of the governed. Do we truly have people who are representing those who are voting for them? The consent of the governed. We have to go to break. Back in just a moment.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a blue ribbon task force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a blue ribbon legislative task force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who's deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. P.C. Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody.
I never meant to go into politics. It wasn't my intention when I was young. But I was raised to believe you had to pay your way for the blessings bestowed on you. I was happy with my career in the entertainment world, but I ultimately went into politics because I wanted to protect something precious. Ours was the first revolution in the history of mankind that truly reversed the course of government, and with three little words: we the people. We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route and how fast. Almost all the world's constitutions are documents in which governments tell the people what their privileges are. Our Constitution is a document in which we the people tell the government what it is allowed to do. We the people are free.
Nobody says it better than President Ronald Reagan, obviously. I notice privileges are. Governor Hutchinson loves to use the term privileges. Hey, the state plant board. I'm going to talk about this more in the 5 o'clock hour. Hey, coming up at 5, we'll be talking with the purveyor of the Copeland Report, Donnie Copeland, former state representative, will be on the program talking about the issues of the day. But, hey, the state plant board has banned dicamba. And I'm going to do a segment on this to catch everybody up if you don't know what this is. But, it's essentially a chemical, Monsanto chemical that, supposed to be a weed killer. And, of course, it drifts over onto soybean crops. And what a lot of people don't realize is, I guess last October you had in Mississippi County, you had 2 farmers, and one of the farmers shot and killed another farmer over this very concept. And I'll get into more of that in a minute, but the deceased, who, was just simply inquiring, according to reports about dicamba drift on his field, the victim is actually the cousin of Senator Dave Wallace. And believe it or not, the trial was scheduled to go into effect this year. I mean, we're supposed to go to trial, I think, earlier in the year, and then it got pushed back to September, and now it's supposed to go to trial December, and I just don't know what's taking so long to bring justice here. But anyway, that's how volatile the whole situation, this dicamba ban. People have lost their lives here We're going to talk about that at 5, and it also made the New York Times, by the way. Back in a minute.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this. And I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Yesterday, Senator Hendren asked DFNA to run those numbers and bring them back after lunch. And when they ran those numbers, let me look back at my notes here. They ran the numbers, and basically it was about if they did all the sales tax exemptions, which they admitted they can't do, but, hypothetically, that $1.4 billion number, they could basically reduce the amount of income taxes that they collect in half if they put, if they wanted to be revenue neutral.
Of course.
So let me see if I can find those numbers because they're actually, Go ahead.
No, I would say the Gazette is reporting on 10 of the exemptions accounted for $1.1 billion in reduced revenue in 2011. And so they talk about the gasoline and motor fuel on which gas or fuel tax has been paid, costing $325 million. But we already, so they're saying that that's an exemption, but yet we already have gas taxes. I mean, if they were to get rid of that exemption, that would, in my opinion, be a double taxation on gas. You've got...
Yes.
Go ahead, talk about that if you want.
No, that's a really good point. And that actually came up yesterday. You say that's an exemption, but like you said, we have an excise tax, which were talked about in today's meeting. And so the excise tax is the per gallon amount. I think it's like 21.5 cents per gallon amount. And so they have that as excise tax. So saying it's an exemption, that they might can say that, but if they took away that exemption, like you said, it would almost be double taxation. But I found these numbers here. They said if they were able to take that $1.4 billion, and I think that $1.1 billion number was like the top 10 exemptions. That was in one of the slides. But I think the total from that 2011 estimate was $1.4 billion. And they said, okay, if we took all that money and cut income tax rates with it, then they would have three rates of 1%, 3%, 3.5%. The 1% rate wouldn't kick in until $8,400, and then the 3% rate would kick in at $35,100. So that would be, true significant tax relief to a lot of Arkansans.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's kind of a hypothetical. They can't reduce that number by that amount just from the sales tax exemptions, but it gives you an idea of, the real relief that is out there if, in my opinion, they're willing to cut spending, couple that with
they have to cut.
Will be a triumph. I tell you, a triumph. If I was ever sure of anything, I'm sure of that. A triumph. And if it isn't, we've still got 4 days left to think of something else.
Oh, this just popped up in my feed. All right, I have to go here. I'm going to deviate from our schedule just a little bit here. First off, Conduit for Action, they just tweeted out, they've got a new article, Credit Due, Recognizing Positives from Conservatives. While there is plenty of negative things going on in Arkansas government, we should also give credit where credit is due and recognizing the positives of legislators and what they're doing. And it's kind of a flashback of the Calvin Coolidge Awards. Check that out at conduitforaction.org. Also, Twitter has I'm pretty sure Twitter's increased their character limit. That's happened. It's obviously happened. I read something about it, and here it is. But this just popped up in my hashtag ARLeg feed. And it's from State Representative Stephen Meeks. State Representative Stephen Meeks, we've talked about on this program before. He is a Republican, okay? And for the most, he certainly is a nice guy. And for the most part, his voting record, I could find things I agree with. I could find things I disagree with. But one of the things that I have given him criticism before in the past is he's a Republican, and he has tried to pass bills that have to do with light pollution and regulate the lights that you can have on a highway, billboard, because of light trespass is what it's called, and it really, I feel like, has to do with he enjoys looking at the stars. Click off of this tweet real quick. Let's actually look at his profile page on his Twitter. If you scroll up, you see that there? He just got a picture of the stars there. This is clearly kind of the thing that he is interested in. And this is an example of how politicians, in my opinion, they really can't help themselves. They got an interest, and so they want to, they want to try to do something that they believe needs done that other people don't care anything about, but it would affect their lives in a negative way, certainly in an inconvenient way. Okay? Like, what's the difference between trying to regulate light, okay, and where you can put lights on your house or anything else? What's the difference in that and the government telling you how much water a toilet needs to use, because we got to conserve water, and we don't, Rand Paul famously was, questioning somebody up in, the Senate, and he was like, my toilets don't work because of your regulations, right? They don't work. They're not flushing the way they should flush because we're not allowed to have tanks the way we need to. And then you got light bulbs, the whole light bulb thing that they've regulated. It's ridiculous. Anybody try to go buy a light bulb? They seem like they're going out more often, too. It's just awful. State Representative Stephen Meeks just tweeted this 8 minutes ago, according to my feed. It says, this is something Arkansas, the natural state, should pursue. And he links to this article from Idaho. Associated Press headline, Idaho looking to cash in on starry skies with more tourists. Scrolling down, Boise, Idaho. The stars are aligning for Idaho. Now that is a good pun. The stars are aligning for Idaho mainly because they're visible. The International Dark Sky Association this week named the central Idaho city of Ketchum an international dark sky community. It sounds like some sort of superhero evil alliance. Only the 16th in the world. After years of efforts to limit excess artificial light, it comes as bigger parts of the state received or are seeking rare dark sky designations that can attract stargazers and boost home values. Now, what did his tweet say? That Arkansas needs to consider this as well? Joe, is that what the tweet said? Okay. So just keep in mind, this is something Arkansas, the natural state, should pursue, meaning we need an international dark sky designation. Good grief. This piece goes on. Craters of the Moon National Monument and Preserve in South Central Idaho, a prime destination for astronomy buffs, became an international dark sky park earlier this year, one of about 40 in the United States. And the rarest prize of all could come in December when the association decides whether to designate 1,400 square miles in central Idaho an international dark sky reserve. It would be the first in the nation. Now, does this strike anybody as just too much? Like, is this not ridiculous? Is this to me? I mean, it's one thing to designate it, but you know how hard it's going to be if somebody wants to turn on a flashlight there eventually? Or a spotlight or something? Now, again, this was tweeted by a really, really great, nice guy, State Representative Stephen Meeks. He's a Republican, but he has tried to pass bills in Arkansas, thankfully that failed, that would have regulated what is something called light trespass. And we've read you the bill before, and it's absolutely ridiculous, and it is no business. The government has no business trying to do this type of stuff, just so stargazers or people that like to look at the stars will get a clearer view. That's really all it's about. It's also about, conservation and everything else. But I don't know about you, but I want to be able to turn on a light whenever I want to turn on a light. I do. Okay. I want to keep going with this. This is fascinating to me. Much of Ketchum's economy runs on tourism. Tourism. Keep that in mind. We're going to tourism next. And the designations could bring in additional visitors. Thousands descended on the mountain resort town for last summer's total solar eclipse, and it's sandwiched between the ritzy Sun Valley to the east and the Sun Valley Resorts ski area on Bald Mountain to the west, which draws tourists from across the globe. Let me tell you this. We already know an argument. It's just going to be for tourism. We need to regulate light trespass, and we need to have a dark sky designation. Hey, I got news for you. We don't need any designation to tell us that the sky is dark at night. Anybody? Do we need a designation saying that the sky is dark at night?
And honestly, how many people trek to Arkansas, like in the millions, for tourism purposes a year?
I mean, it's fine. Don't worry. I mean, I don't understand. This is just, we're too enthusiastic, I guess, about certain things. It's one thing to be enthusiastic. You don't go look at the stars. Go look at the stars. I mean, where I hunt deer, the stars are beautiful. And yeah, I'm not going to argue the fact that the stars are you can appreciate the stars more when there's less light. Of course you can. Of course you can. We don't need legislation designating anything. We don't need to regulate this. This is I like being in the 21st century. I like technology. I like lights, right? And I'm sorry that has made stargazing worse for a minority of people, but I don't care. I don't care. And if you ever were to get the government involved in this, it would be a complete disaster eventually. Oh, it would be fine at first. There would be checks. They would promise but it would eventually grow, and there would be more problems and more problems and more problems, and then they would write it into the code, write it into the statute, trying to make everybody happy. If you listen, there are plenty of places you can live in Arkansas that have no lights, that make the stars look gorgeous at night. If it's that much of a priority, go there. And you can pretty much drive anywhere you need to in the state of Arkansas, so you don't even have to live there. But if you want to go on a weekend, I would rather go hunting. But if you would rather go have a weekend out in the woods looking at the stars, you're perfectly free to go do that. Okay? So, but just drop the whole legislation thing. It's ridiculous. What does else to say about dark sky? Dark sky measures have drawn opposition in the U.S. from the outdoor advertising industry and those against additional government regulations. Yeah, that would be me. And yeah, outdoor advertising agencies, they don't bother me. Do they bother you? But apparently they bother some people. They bother some people. But quite frankly, that's a part of our economy, and I certainly don't want to do just don't do anything. Can we not rely on the voluntary cooperation of men? And if that doesn't work, then I think this is the definition of a temporary evil. Don't you? This is the definition. Oh, there's billboards with lights that are making it hard on me to look at stars in the proper context. Well, that's the definition of a temporary evil, that because the benefits of freedom are so great everywhere else, and we're just going to have to put up with the fact that there's some stargazers that are going to have to deal with that. You know? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the government doesn't need anything to do with this. Speaking of tourism, though, we're getting a dark sky situation. We need a dark sky designation because of tourism dollars. Let's go now to the Times Record. The Times Record has a headline that's made some people very upset on Facebook. Arkansas tourism cash flow in jeopardy with bathroom bill. This was written back on the 3rd of this month. John Lovett from the Times Record writes that tourism in Arkansas contributes to about $350 million a year. You know, it could be more than that if we would just have some dark sky designations. Tourism in Arkansas contributes about $350 million a year in state taxes, and a bill on bathroom use being studied after its failure in the legislature. Yeah, failure, not so much. It was more like people protecting the governor's desk. Let's just think of it this way. They tried to put a fence. They tried to build a wall around the governor's desk. Republicans did. They didn't want bathroom bills. They didn't want true Second Amendment bills coming to the governor's desk. They tried, they built a wall, and they were successful in shutting out many awkward, controversial positions it would have put Asa Hutchinson in. But they're saying now that this study, because they are studying a bathroom bill, meaning, clarification on privacy and trying to stop the coming trend. And in some cases, if you talk to some state reps or state senators, they'll tell you that it is a problem in their community where they do have people who are biological men or biological women wanting to use the locker rooms, that in a situation that doesn't match their sex. So they're men wanting to go into women's rooms and women wanting to go into men's rooms. This is already an issue, and that's why they're studying it, seeing what should be done. Now, the Arkansas tourism director, his name is Joe David Rice. I reached out to Joe David Rice's office, inviting him to come on the program, and I haven't heard anything back yet. But I welcome him to come on this program and to talk about this, because I think his statements need to be addressed. They need to be explained. I'd love to have him on to explain this to the people of Arkansas, because I think there are some that see no issue, right, with just kind of clarifying what is this problem that is developed and is coming, going to get more severe about, it's pretty basic about, your biological sex and that sort of thing. Very self-evident truth. So, Joe David Rice. Now, Rice and Jim Daly. Now, Jim Daly is the incoming tourism director. And now I'm told these guys are leftists. Big shocker. But they were in Van Buren and Fort Smith on Thursday after having visited much of northwest Arkansas. The piece goes on. Speaking to members of the Van Buren Advertising and Promotion Commission and other local leaders Thursday at the Van Buren Chamber of Commerce, Rice said the bill from State Senator Linda Collins Smith of Pocahontas, quote, can really undo a lot of hard work done by thousands of folks. Can really undo a lot of hard work by thousands of folks. Quote, we've had some political issues coming up in the legislature that have threatened to harm everything we've done for the last 30 years. So we have this Mr. Rice, okay, who is saying, now think about that. That's pretty, don't you think that's a little drastic? Don't you think that's kind of, that's making the, the consequences here. That's making them really steep. You're painting what I would consider kind of a very sensationalist opinion here. Arkansas Tourism Director Joe David Rice saying, essentially, that if the bathroom bill were to pass, it would threaten and harm everything the Arkansas Tourism Department has done over the last 30 years. Everything. Not some things. Everything, he says. Rice said of what he called the bathroom bill, quote, he goes on, we have spent literally millions of dollars trying to establish a positive image of Arkansas out there. People think that Arkansas is a good place to come and that bathroom bill could jeopardize all of that. Really? What kind of people think Arkansas is a good place to come? You think people in New York City think Arkansas is a good place to come? You think people in San Francisco think Arkansas is a good... I'm pretty sure their mind's already made up because we're flyover country, we're Trump country. Why would you ever want to go to Arkansas? No, I think the people... Matter of fact, we might get more tourism if we actually stand up for conservatism and this concept of stating basic biological realities and trying to protect the privacy of people when they're here. Doesn't the Arkansas Tourism Department maintain public restrooms at campgrounds? Isn't that in their purview? I'm surprised this hasn't even been talked about, right? You could, hey, come to Arkansas. Men go in men's rooms and women go in women's rooms at the campgrounds. Ta-da! That actually, we might devolve into such, moral decay at some point that actually is a selling point. Hey, come to Arkansas where men are men and women are women. No? But no. If we have the bathroom bill, it will undo everything we've done the last 30 years. I wonder how many other bureaucrats in the Arkansas government parrot Walmart talking points. Anyone? No? We've spent literally millions of dollars trying to establish a positive image. How many millions of dollars do they say that they have every year? Is it $350 million? Yeah. Where does it say that? Tourism in Arkansas contributes $350 million. That's great. That'd be what I consider passive income. So let's take that $350 million that we're getting every year and cut taxes by $350 million. What do we say? Let's eliminate. Yeah, put it to roads. Do something with it. But no. That's, that money is it's being used. All of it's right now being spent on other things. So it does say correctly here that Linda Collins Smith withdrew her proposal for the bill, but wants the issue studied so lawmakers can look at the proposal again. According to previous reports from the Associated Press, Collins Smith has said the proposal is needed to protect the privacy of students by preventing someone of the opposite sex from changing or showering in front of them. Governor Hutchinson, the Times Record, the SW Times anyway. The Times Record reports accurately that Governor Asa Hutchinson had opposed the measure, saying he didn't see the need for a bathroom bill similar to North Carolina's law, which had drawn widespread boycotts from businesses. And that's the real crux. That's also why he wanted to change the enhanced carry bill, because the SEC and the NCAA said so. So he did. Daley, okay, so this Daley guy who's going to be the new tourism director, he was the mayor of Little Rock for 14 years. He's described as going to be carrying the torch. Do what? Oh, yeah, of course. Mayors of Little Rock, I'm going to make the best bureaucrats. By the way, can we talk about that for a second? Why in the world is the former mayor of Little Rock, this guy can't be a Republican, right? Why is he getting this position? Anybody? Oh, right. It's because Ace is a Republican. Right. Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So he's going to carry the torch on. Starts at the beginning of 2018. He is quoted as saying, so when issues come up, this is the new guy going to take the reins in 2018. So when issues come up, whether it's the bathroom bill or whether it's one that threatens other aspects of tourism initiatives in Arkansas, they'll know who you are and they will hopefully respond favorably at that time. He's talking about that statement is in the context of the relationships he wants to develop with legislators. So the former mayor of Little Rock, Mr. Daley here, is going to carry the torch. Man, this is so frustrating. If you really think about it, and you really think about the Republicans controlling massive majorities in the House and the Senate and the governorship, supposedly the governorship, this is ridiculous. But of course Asa wants somebody that's hostile to it. It will end tourism here. Nobody's going to want to come here, really? I don't know. It's pretty refreshing. Anybody see what happened with Target stock when they implemented their little bathroom policy? Did anybody see what happened when people just quit? You might get, honestly, seriously, if you take a stand and you were to advertise that stand, you might get more tourism in this state for people that say, you know what, they're reasonable. I'd like to spend my money in Arkansas on a vacation. Lake Norfolk is a great place to go, by the way. We've got to take a break. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program. Liberty Machine rolls on back in a minute.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number one of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you. Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions.
Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. If you would like information about advertising or supporting the Paul Harrell Program and Conduit Media Group, call 870-275-9755. Join the fight against big government and advance the preservation of liberty by calling 870-275-9755. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
We'll get some real genius level ideas here. Okay, so just so you know, in that last segment, it really came together with tourism and a last-minute tweet by State Representative Stephen Meeks saying, we need to consider dark sky designations to help tourism. Then you go over to the geniuses at the tourism department here in Arkansas, and they're worried about a bathroom bill undoing everything that they've ever done. Ugh. Still don't know if the new guy here, Jim Daly, okay, he's going to be the new guy at the Arkansas Tourism Department, former mayor of Little Rock. We just did a quick Google search. We can't figure out if the guy's a Republican or a Democrat. Just a brief Google search. We can't really figure that out. Do they run? Is it a nonpartisan race down there? Is that what they do? I don't know. I didn't think that was the case, but anyway. This made a lot of people mad. I mean, people on Facebook, Republicans on Facebook are saying something needs to change at the Arkansas Tourism Department. Yeah? And other people are saying that as well. I mean, when it comes to, like we talked about the other day, the dental board not getting their pick. It's happening, it's fascinating to me. If Asa Hutchinson wants to know why his poll numbers are bad, and they are bad, even though you've got some saying that they're better than they were last week, some new polls, you just got to look at his actions. People are talking. It's not just this program. It's a big part of it, but it's not just this program, right? If you look at what he's done, he's made a large constituencies upset. Whether you're looking at people in the medical community and their boards, whether you're looking at the farmers and agriculture, people are kind of worried. And then if you look at the hunters in this state, and some of the appointments of the Arkansas Game and Fish have been brought to my attention as well. I'm going to try to cover that, later dates and stuff. We will have the purveyor of the Copeland Report. That's KOPLAN report.com. Mr. Donnie Copeland will be with us when we come back. And you don't want to miss that. It's always fun. And then we're going to get into dicamba next hour. Okay? Don't miss it. Thanks for listening, folks. Back in a minute.
Sean and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Yeah, they have to, and we have to understand that the people of Arkansas, I mean, they're wanting more revenue because they want to reform. That is what they say. They want to reform taxes, but they want to protect the government nest egg, whatever they're currently getting now. They want to make sure that they're getting that same amount in the future, and that to me is troublesome. It really truly is troublesome. It's not necessarily an exemption game. Not necessarily that I'm opposed to doing that, but are you willing to cut spending, what the government's spending now, to free up money? And they just don't seem to have a capacity to do that. I mean, is there anybody out there proposing a bold idea of eliminating Arkansas's income tax altogether, like other states? I mean, I don't think that they're even talking about that, are they?
No, that hasn't come up not in the last 2 days when I was there, and I don't remember hearing it at any other meeting before now.
Yeah.
There was emphasis on, income tax and sales tax are the two biggest revenue sources for Arkansas. So to completely eliminate the income tax, they would, either have to cut spending significantly or make it up somewhere else. So,
right, of course, and I think that would be a productive discussion to have as well. So we're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategy. So you say the first day was on sales taxes and everything else, and the second day, today's meeting, was on excise taxes. Now, was there any new data? Did they have any new data from different years today? Because it sounds to me like if you're trying to make decisions based on 2011, it'd be nice to be able to make decisions based on the last fiscal year that we have. But was there any shift in that, or still using old numbers?
I guess today it wasn't as an intensive report. So some of the numbers were more current. They were using the tax handbook that BLR puts out. That was a lot of the source information from today. And so they did talk about excise taxes. So for most people who don't know what that is, that's kind of, kind of explained as the sin taxes to an extent, taxes, a certain specific amount rather than necessarily a specific rate in some situations on cigarettes, on alcohol, an excise tax that we've talked about, the premium insurance tax, the motor fuel tax, the price per gallon on that. So those are the excise taxes that they talked about today. But one thing I think people should be aware of, though, and it was in yesterday's meeting, is there's still this big push for the idea of getting revenue from an internet sales tax. Now, yesterday, I thought one good thing was they did talk about the legal distinction between a sales tax and a use tax, and how that's playing out in different states, and the inability to force out-of-state sellers to collect and remit. And I know you talked about this on your program a lot, but this is something that's not going away. The internet sales tax, they're trying to find ways around it. The legal standard through an economic nexus standard they want to implement, or through regulations or definition changes from the kind of the bureaucracy level of government. They're looking at what other states are doing to get that source of revenue and to get more revenue into the state. So I do want to, let your listeners know to still, be aware of that is still going on. They're still researching how much money they can get from that going forward.
Yeah, and that's a problem. We mentioned that a little bit yesterday. They're wanting more money from us, and this is a proposal that's already been rejected by the people's representatives. They couldn't get it through, and so now they're still considering it. They're still talking about it. They really do want this increase in revenue, and they want to be able to be sovereign over businesses outside of the state of Arkansas that don't have a physical location here, which is a dangerous precedent. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Matter of fact, I did read somewhere, Josh, I'm sure you read this too, where Arkansas is now participating. Is it a lawsuit, or is it an appeal to try to get that power on other states?
Yeah. So I talked about that Friday on the show. when I was filling in for you, that the state of Arkansas has basically signed on to this lawsuit saying, hey, the U.S. Supreme Court, please take up the South Dakota case. And as we know, the South Dakota law, the internet sales tax law they passed, was basically the same as Senate Bill 140 this last Arkansas legislative session. And the state Supreme Court in South Dakota struck it down, saying it's unconstitutional. You can't do this, upholding Will versus North Dakota. So several states, including Arkansas, have signed on to a challenge to the U.S. Supreme Court, basically encouraging the Supreme Court to relook at this issue. And, ultimately that's what Arkansas was trying to do, because they admitted it in the, during the session that it was unconstitutional. They'd have to go through legal proceedings to get this overturned at the U.S. Supreme Court. So, but yeah, that's unfortunate to see. I think that, I talk about the poll numbers. People, Arkansans, when they're polled, they reject the idea of the internet sales tax. The state legislature.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, it's hour number 2. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine, and we want you to help us do that. One of the ways you can do that is to just sound off. Call us, text us, 870-275-9799. We're also up at Facebook Live. That's facebook.com/Paul Talk Show, as well as broadcasting on YouTube and over at paulharrell.com. Joining us now, a friend of the program, we have Donnie Copeland of the CopelandReport.com, as well as a former state representative, which I don't know if that's like a popular thing to say anymore, Donnie, or not, but welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Paul.
Absolutely. I'm really happy to have you on again. So let's just talk a little bit. I want to remind everybody this website, CopelandReport.com. It's a news aggregator. It's really good if you want to catch up on some Arkansas news and just kind of get a feel for the snapshot. You guys are doing a great job of what happens on a daily basis in Arkansas.
Well, thank you so much. We really enjoyed doing it. We tried to do our best to also add in some key national stories, and also, in addition to that, also take advantage of some really good opinion pieces out there. So I really encourage your listeners to go to CopelandReport.com after listening to the Paul Harrell Show.
Of course, yeah, and we got a nice ad of the Paul Harrell program that links to our website down there as well, so that's good. And I want to tell our audio-only audience, it's not spelled like your last name. It's spelled Koplan report.com. There's no D in there. So,
that is correct. That is correct.
Yeah, so we got the website up now. So, Donnie, let's just talk a little bit about what are some of the issues that are on your mind right now that you feel need mentioning or talking about.
Well, I think one is kind of the elephant in the room is the Roy Moore story is really
interesting
devastating. And I'm gonna preface that by saying I'm assuming that it's not true, and the only disturbing part is anytime you have multiple accusations. And here's my reasoning with that, and then I want to get on a local or state level after that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But here's my concern is, and what I think was just deplorable was you had Mitch McConnell and someone else that just escapes me who it was that came out almost immediately and saying if this is true, he needs to step down. He doesn't need to run. And those guys, and we've seen that on a state level, they would literally rather have a Democrat than they would a conservative Republican.
And they jump to the media. I mean, they do that because they believe that they're expected to do it. They believe that if they don't come out and immediately that they're all of a sudden going to be thought that they're condoning it. But that's not at all what happens. I mean, you have to look. It may very well be possible that it's true. Okay, for those of you that don't know, Roy Moore, the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos owns it. They've already endorsed Roy Moore's opposition Democrat. They want the Democrat, but they've run this piece. They say that he sexually had a relationship with a 14-year-old when he was like 32 years old or something. But you've got to look at the context, first of all. First of all, he flatly denies it. He says that it's absolutely untrue, that it's a desperate political attack. And so at this point, it's like, okay, well, what do you do? How are you going to get to any sort of conclusion before the election happens? And I think that's probably a potential goal here is maybe we find out after the election that we have, proof that none of this was true, like actual proof of who's right and who's wrong here.
Hey, and here's something that I think about, and it's kind of in the back of my mind. Thank God for a guy like Steve Bannon, who is the type of person that would put a ton of money into an investigation to find out who's making this up, who's behind this. And I liken that, and I'm not trying to just blow you guys' horn, but I liken that to our state. And we have a very similar situation where we have establishment Republicans that would rather literally, and we've seen this happen in primaries, and we're seeing it happen right now, and in general elections, would rather have a Democrat than a Republican in a lot of cases. And thank goodness for someone like Conduit, someone like your program that will fight, and not only fight, but will put money up and help get candidates, good conservative candidates. And, man, we just, think about if we did not have Steve Bannon on a national level, we didn't have Conduit on a state level, where we would be, there would be no hope virtually.
Yeah, there'd be nobody to fight back and, actually advocate for limited government. And, the criticism that Conduit takes, and we saw this at the Benton County Republican Committee with Bart Hester, Jenna De La Rosa, they, you heard it. I mean, if it grows government, Conduit says, how it grows government and who it is making those decisions. And so you're exactly right there, Donnie. But to back way up, back to the Alabama thing real quick. I just think my comment on that is I think you just got to wait and see, because at this point, I know one thing: the left's desperate, but at the same time, he completely denies it. I don't know. I have no idea how that's going to work out, and so we'll just have to wait and see on that one.
And when is that election?
Oh gosh, it's I'm not sure. Joe, find out when the Alabama Roy Moore election is.
And again, the timing is so curious. The man has ran for office. This is probably his 8th or 9th race, maybe 10th race, counting primaries. So wouldn't you find it so intriguing that it's just now? And what I would not be surprised is that just as in the GPS GPS Fusion, the dossier that came out that Hillary and so forth tried to hatch up in the DNC on Trump, that there was Republicans. John McCain is alleged to be behind at least the first part of that. And I would not be in the least surprised if this was not a joint effort between the Republicans and the Democrats. That's how bad they hate conservatism. And I think a lot of times our fellow constituents and citizens, rather, don't really fully realize how bad the establishment, the swamp, has been is starting to be known as. How they don't realize how desperate they are to hold on to power hold on to position,
Yeah.
i.e. to hold on to money.
So the election is December the 12th over there in Alabama.
Okay.
So, I mean,
so it's
a month
it's
away.
coming up, but
Yeah,
I mean,
4 weeks.
At least it's not 3 days before.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
yeah, and you know, it's just a weird. The whole thing is very strange. But isn't it crazy? Just seriously think about this. Since Donald Trump's elections, for sure. I mean, the media is so. I mean, they've thrown any thread of objectivity that they had left, which wasn't much. It's all gone now. Isn't it crazy? I mean, the times that we live in. The Washington Post comes out with a story like this, and we are, I mean, within every reasonable expectation to doubt 100% of the story. Like, I mean, that's not crazy. It's not crazy to completely doubt everything the Washington Post is saying because of the times we live in.
And look at their track record. I mean, it got almost laughable during the primary and then during the general election when they would come out with a story almost daily, and it would be refuted 2 days later, and it would be like these. I don't remember a story this serious. And here, think about it this way, Paul. When you've got $18 billion, whatever the guy has. I mean, the guy has just got more money than, you know, most of the world. I mean, you can survive a defamation suit. I mean, and you better be able to if this is made up.
Yeah, that's true. And that's what they say in their statement, that this is defamatory. So you would expect a lawsuit. That's
absolutely.
You know.
I mean, I'd sue him for however much he has. I'd sue him, you know, hopefully he's on the Bezos is on the corner, you know, collecting change in Little Rock with the, you know, sometime later. But yeah, it's really bad. But to see the parallel between the desperation of the establishment nationally and then to see that in the state, it is so similar. You know, look at Dan Sullivan being, you know, primaried over there. You see Sturch, you know, a primary in Linda Collins Smith, and you see, you know, and now he would probably, you know, not agree with me, but Garner down in South Arkansas when he ran against Bobby Pierce, and you know, I mean, the governor sided with Bobby Pierce.
Yeah, you know why? Yeah, that's interesting. Senator Trent Gardner, who did win, Republican. Asa wanted the Democrat to win. That was a reality, and it was only because Senator Trent Gardner on his website said that he was opposed to Medicaid expansion. That was it. That was the only. It's crazy the lengths these people will go to. You know, you have I believe it was former Speaker Davy Carter campaigning for Democrats against Republicans, and yet he was a Republican. I know now he's changed to Democrat and that sort of thing, but
he's an independent now.
I think
he's an independent.
I think he actually officially registered as a Democrat, though, Donnie. I'm serious.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was the news. I think that was back earlier in the year.
Wow.
Davy
last
Carter.
I heard, he and Nate Bell were the two members of the independent coalition in the state. So maybe
I'm like, I mean, I'm 90% sure that it happened because I thought he was independent as well because I remember those headlines. But then somebody corrected me and they sent me the actual information on it all. But
well, that actually makes me feel much better because he's much more Democrat than he is an independent.
Well, yeah, right.
I mean, he's certainly not a Republican. Never was, and he's not. If he's an independent, he's not a very good one. He's a much better, to me, not even moderate.
Well,
he's
Chuck
Schumer,
regardless of what his registration is, former Speaker of the House. Regardless, he clearly was a fan of Democrat policies. So, Donnie, did you get a look at the poll numbers that came out last week from Governor Asa Hutchinson that showed he'd lost 17 points among Republicans?
Those were in the toilet. Yeah, that was not good. And I did hear yesterday. I had one of my contacts in the Capitol was telling me that the governor's really started a major outreach program, hired some minority pastors that are now on his payroll, and he's really doing the outreach. And his coalition will be conservative or really any Democrat he can get, and then moderate to liberal Republicans, because that's what's been his coalition when he gets legislation passed, and so it only makes sense. So that's going to be his coalition.
You're
for
saying
re-election.
Okay, so you're saying he's actually going to minority churches, and that's what you've heard, and he's enlisting them.
He actually hired a very well-known minority pastor, and he's doing quote unquote outreach for the governor's office. So,
Well, what's interesting on that is, that used to be, that's what we used to hear that the Democrats would do all the time, to turn out the vote. So I just was speculating last hour that if Asa Hutchinson does in fact have a primary, we can count on the Hutchinson administration wanting Democrats to vote in the open Republican primary and actively recruiting them to do so. And let me just say this. If that actually happens, I would challenge anybody who works for the governor's reelection campaign, who works on the governor's staff, who considers themselves a conservative. Because there are those who still consider themselves conservatives that are working for the governor. If that is their tactic in a Republican primary, I don't know how you could ever call yourself a conservative ever again, period.
Yeah, isn't that a Trent Lott trick from when he ran against Chris McDaniel in Mississippi? I mean, that's actually how Trent Lott won, wasn't it? Was it Lott? Maybe the old Mossback senator from Mississippi that beat the upstart conservative, but he basically got Democrats to cross over. I mean and we saw that in the last round of House and Senate races here in the state. They got Democrats to cross over. That was the only way they could win, because the conservatives are going to vote for conservatives in a primary. So yeah, I don't know. Has there been an actual candidate I know Jan Morgan's talked about it.
She's got an exploratory committee, is what Jan Morgan has, that she's formed.
And I've not seen any fundraising. Have you seen anything?
I haven't.
What she's raised?
No, I have not. So that'll be interesting.
I don't know.
But, we know, she's speaking at the Mississippi County Republican Party this Saturday, and we do know that the governor tried to have her disinvited by using one of his employees to do so. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you didn't hear about this?
So much for First Amendment, huh?
Yeah, he did. We've got the email. We've got the email and everything from Doug Smith. He makes $50,000 a year, works for the governor's office, and he sent an email trying to bully the Mississippi County Republicans and get Jan Morgan uninvited. He even copied. This is what's really nefarious about it. This is how the good old boy system works. He copied the owner of the Holiday Inn, of the venue, which, if you know anything about Mississippi County, you know anything about Blytheville. My mom's from there. My grandparents were from there. I used to go there as a child. The Holiday Inn is essentially the only place to have any event at all in Blytheville.
Yeah, I've been to that. That venue.
Yeah, and so for Doug Smith from the governor's office to copy the owner of that event on the email criticizing Jan Morgan was essentially an invitation to the owner saying, hey, you should cancel the event. You should threaten to cancel the event if they have Jan Morgan to speak. That's the kind of subtle, passive-aggressive type stuff that, has really been the lifeblood of Arkansas politics for a very long time.
Am I having deja vu, or has this happened before? Hadn't this happened previously, where they tried to get someone disinvited?
Yeah, well, she was disinvited from the Craighead County Republican Reagan Day dinner. She has been reinvited to speak at a later date this month, I believe, sometime.
But I was thinking before her even there was someone that was disinvited.
Before her. I don't know.
Man, that just seems so familiar. But that's unfortunately, when I think when you're afraid of a voice that may speak to the right of you want to silence it.
That's exactly right. Donnie Copeland, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Oh, always great to be with you, Paul, and wish you the best.
All righty, you too. Folks, the website is CopelandReport.com. Just go check it out. It's a great news aggregator to keep up on Arkansas politics. That's CopelandReport.com. And it's always great to have Donnie, talk about the issues of the day. We have got to go to break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
iTex is your first choice for cost-effective IT services. Protecting your business means protecting your data. Are you tired of unpredictable and expensive spikes in IT spending? Using iTex will prevent downtime and loss of employee productivity and do it all with an affordable, predictable budget. iTex is the premier managed service provider for small and medium businesses. They help their clients put IT to work to earn your business more money, and you should contact them today for a free consultation. 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Do you need to advertise your business product or service, but not sure what the best choice is? Folks, allow me to introduce you to Talk Radio. You're listening to it right now. Talk radio is one of the most unique mediums in all of advertising because it actually works. It gets the information you want to the people you want to get it to. And by the way, those people are educated, well-informed decision makers of their household, and most of them have disposable income. If this is a target audience for your business, then you have to consider advertising on my show, The Paul Harrell Program. We have options for most any budget and can provide you with exciting opportunities to grow your business. We can put your message across the state, or we can help you locally. Call 870-275-9755 if you have any questions. That's 870-275-9755, or visit my website, paulharrell.com, and click on Advertise.
Egg. What egg?
America, the birth of a new nation. If only we could be sure of what kind of a bird it's going to be.
Thomas, a point.
What sort of bird shall we choose as the symbol of our new America?
The eagle.
The dove. The turkey.
The eagle.
The dove.
The eagle.
The eagle. The turkey.
The eagle is a majestic bird.
The eagle is a scavenger, a thief, and a coward. A symbol of over 10 centuries of European mischief.
The turkey.
The turkey is a truly noble bird. Native American, source of sustenance of our original settlers. An incredibly brave fellow who will not flinch at attacking a regiment of Englishmen, single-handedly. Therefore, the national bird of America is going to be...
The eagle.
The eagle.
So medical marijuana is a thing in Arkansas, or people are still figuring out how to deal with it. You know, what a lot of people don't understand is with this medical marijuana situation, if I was down at the Marble Palace, I was interviewing Representative Douglas House a couple of times, and the marijuana issue here in Arkansas, now that we have medical marijuana, now that it's a constitutional amendment, the legislators at the Marble Palace will now spend half of their time during sessions regulating marijuana. I want you to understand that. Like, a lot of people don't know that. They will now spend half their time. I see that Kurt Lanning over at NWA homepage has now got an article entitled that the Arkansas National Guard has a reminder for Arkansas National Guardsmen that marijuana use is still prohibited if you are in the Arkansas National Guard. One thing is abundantly clear about the medical marijuana amendment. A select few people are going to make a ton of money. And that was what was behind it the whole time. It was money that was behind paying the signature gatherers. It was money that was behind getting the amendments on the ballot. It's now going to be money in legislators' pockets. You have to think about, there is now a brand new lobby in Arkansas, the medical or the marijuana industry. Back in a minute.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this. And I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
During the session that it was unconstitutional, they'd have to go through legal proceedings to get this overturned at the U.S. Supreme Court. So, but yeah, that's unfortunate to see. I think that I talk about the poll numbers. People, Arkansans, when they're polled, they reject the idea of the internet sales tax. The state legislature just rejected it. The people's representative voted it down. And at the end of the day, I think people are, fed up. They don't want the government with more money. They want money less in their pockets.
And that's the whole thing here. The question is, how much money do the people of Arkansas want to give the government? And right now, we're giving them a lot. Do we want to give them more? And that's the issue here. Is I think a lot of people are weary that whatever recommendations they have, they're going to make sure they protect what the government's getting now, and we may end up with a military retirement issue where we actually have, when they're going to be getting more money, and because we know that they have obligations to pay welfare and everything else. A quote from this article. We've got people upset with, the Supreme Court's precedent here on sales tax and the internet. Quote, the problem with the physical presence rule is that it was first conceived of in 1967, 2 years before the moon landing and decades before the first retail transaction occurred over the internet. And, that may be true. Like they're trying to say, well, technology has, outthought the government. And maybe that's true. Maybe it has. But the government is getting record revenue. All governments are getting record revenue. And it just, first of all, the state of Arkansas shouldn't have sovereignty over some business in Indiana or California, just like California shouldn't have sovereignty over some business in Arkansas. And there's a real issue of sovereignty here in the individual states maintaining that. And these legislators who are for internet sales tax, they don't care about that. And they're actually weakening us and empowering other states, and it's very, very frustrating. We're out of time, Josh Waters. I appreciate you being on the program. I'll give you the last word, just real quick. Your overall general feel the 2 days down at the Marble Palace, in front of the tax force.
Overall, I thought it was a lot of data, a lot of information. But what's actually going to happen from this? I think the jury's still out on that. They're going to be meeting again next month, and then they'll have a preliminary report at the end of this year, and then they'll keep meeting through next year. So, again, the last 2 days, a lot of data on sales tax and excise taxes. Next month, be focused on property tax. I have a feeling Municipal League is supposed to be there.
As friend to friend, our declaration committee. For us I see immortality. In Philadelphia City.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. JD in Yell County texts in to the program and writes, Paul, I wonder how many National Guardsmen will quit so that they can have weed. Well, I don't think many will. That's just my. I mean, I don't think many would do that, to give up on serving their country. That would be my gut reaction to the type of people that go into the Guard in the first place and know the risks. But anyway, that's just the news of the National Guard basically reminding, medical marijuana is a thing, but you still can't have it if you're in the Guard. None of that's really going to change. And look, I didn't vote for it. I'll be honest, I did not vote for the amendment for medical marijuana because it was about recreational marijuana more so than it was about epilepsy, and it does. There's no doubt it's going to help some people, but I didn't like the way it was framed. I didn't think we were having an honest debate, and it was one based on money. This was not a vote to whether or not you can grow a plant and do what you want to with it. That would have been a debate I would have loved to have had. No, this was about who's going to make money off of medical marijuana. That's what this was about. Anyway, and look, now that you have a new lobby and a medical, you'll never get the vote on is it legal to grow a plant and do what you want to with it. Right? You're not going to have that vote again in Arkansas. Just FYI. All right, let's go to the phones. Who do we have, Joe?
We have Tony from Benton County.
Tony, Benton County, you're on the Paul Harrell program. You're a first-time caller, Tony?
Yes.
All right, well, welcome to the program. Thanks for calling.
Well, thank you.
What's on your mind?
I know this is going to come up the next actual open legislative session. It may even come up this next one about the funding, or maybe even a special unless the governor blocks it. But I don't know if you've realized that they're trying to call an Article 5 convention under the U.S. Constitution that can actually change the U.S. Constitution via Article 5, which would call a convention.
Yeah, an amendment convention.
And, that's what they call it, and that's what it's written, but
you're afraid of
one of the things,
Tony. You're afraid of a runaway convention, right?
And that's what's going to happen, undoubtedly.
Well, I mean, I've studied this issue a lot. I really have, and what I have found. Let me say a couple things about this, because I have people who I respect and trust who are not for an amendment or an Article 5 amendment convention. And then in the past, I have been one to say, I think this may be the only path forward. But what is interesting, backing up from all of that, is that ever since Donald Trump has been elected, I feel like there's more people who are going to your side of things. Tony, you're afraid of a runaway convention and that it's a bad idea. I feel like if Hillary had won, that movement, Article 5, would have a lot more steam right now. Instead of hearing headlines, for example, of California trying to secede, I think you would have a Texit vote next November. I think the state of Texas, if Hillary would have won, would be having a vote next November to secede. I really believe that. Mm-hmm. So it's a fascinating debate, but and I know this has come up, the Convention of the States, and I've interviewed the folks at the Convention of the States. They've had debates at tea parties. It's come up several times down in the legislature, and so you're worried that it's going to it's actually going to get through next time. Is that right?
Well, yeah, and one of the things about it is if we have this many, I should say, uninformed, uneducated, and really unknowledgeable people in the Arkansas legislature, I don't think they even understand what the convention is. The convention is not limited because it says in the Declaration of Independence that you have a right to alter, abolish, etc., your system of government, period. Federalist 49 goes in and actually mimics that. If you go and read Federalist 49, James Madison actually mimics exactly what that says. That, the convention, it's a tool. Yeah, it's a tool by which a government can be changed and whether it's one convention or one amendment or 1,000 amendments. Once you change the Constitution with one amendment, that Constitution is changed forever unless you can actually repeal that. That being said, there's been too many amendments that have been, quote, passed through ratification, which are not actually, probably have not been amended.
Well, and
look at the 16th and the 17th Amendment. Those were passed during Wilson, and that's already there's a lawsuit in Oklahoma about the ratification of the 16th. I know, but maybe even the 17th, because they may have cheated on it.
Yeah. Which amendments were those again? Is that income tax? 16th and 17th.
The 16th and 17th Amendment.
Imagine them cheating on that one.
Oh yeah, well,
I mean,
think about this.
That would be the one to cheat on if you're the federal government, right?
But also the subject matter. You will hear that they want to have a balanced budget amendment. Well, first of all, that's a bad idea in the first place, because a balanced budget means you could raise taxes you could be forced to raise taxes as much as you could to decrease government. What does government traditionally do? They increase taxes.
No doubt.
You never see them getting rid of government programs.
Well, can I?
But moreover,
I just want to.
We didn't have a.
Let me interject something here, just real quick, Tony, because you make a couple of really good points. Okay. The idea of a runaway convention is scary, and I will just say, yeah, anything can happen. The pro side, the pro Article 5 side, is going to say, though, but no, the law says this, the Constitution says this. But here's the whole issue with this: we don't know what the courts would do. We don't know what the judges would do. This process has never been tried before, so it is all assuming that the rule of law would be followed. It is also assuming that the leftists and some of the other states that would have to get involved wouldn't find a way to implement their agenda as well. So I get the caution, and the best point you made on the cautionary side of this, because see, I'm going to get to the best point you made here in just a minute, but this whole notion of an Article 5 being a runaway convention, if that were true, and I know there's good people on the other side, I've always been on the pro Article 5 side only because I didn't think what we have now is being honored anyway. And so it was kind of a lesser of two evils thing where we say, yeah, it could get much, much worse, but right now it's so bad that the Constitution's meaningless anyway. That was the calculation that I would always make. But I will say I have thought about it more since Donald Trump has been in office, and I'm kind of on the fence now. And the reason I'm on the fence is because, again, the best point that you made, I'm down in Little Rock. I'm down at the Marble Palace. I see these people, and I know that if they passed the Article 5 idea, and other states did, and we actually got to having a convention, the delegates that they pick, well, let me just put it to you this way: they're not going to pick me, right? They're not going to pick. They're going to pick somebody from within that system, and that system is a corrupt system, and I don't trust hardly any of them. The ones that I do trust certainly wouldn't get selected from the delegates. So that's the best point that you made: is we have a lack of conservative understanding down in Little Rock. Asa Hutchinson's our governor. Why in the world would we want to give them power to select a delegate to go represent us in a limited government form in any kind of amendment convention? Go ahead, Tony.
Mm-hmm. Well, going back to some of this, look at how old the federal budget is. We did not have a federal budget, I want to say, until 1921. It could be 1923, but I think it's 1921. None. Because Congress has three powers necessary to maintain government. Congress is to pay the bills. Congress is to tax in order to pay those bills, and Congress is to borrow money. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's the only three powers. You do not give the president a budget, because those funds all of a sudden become fungible. Okay? It was never meant to have a federal budget. That did not happen until what? Till they got, the Wilson regime. I mean, that was a regime that literally changed the face of American politics, and it extended all the way into FDR. And those funds that we make are fungible. They did not have that until 1921.
Yeah.
So, moreover, they would make that federal budget that is already unconstitutional constitutional all of a sudden, and then they could make it to where they have to raise taxes. What would you like to, wouldn't any liberal just love to be able to pick up and say, I just had to increase the tax. We had to obey the law.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you make good points, Tony. Is this one of your pet peeve issues? I mean, we weren't even talking about this, and you called and wanted to talk about it, and Joe said, hey, I've got some guy who wants to talk Article 5, and I said, why not? Why not? I'll see what he has to say.
This is one of my...
Go ahead.
This is one of my pet peeve issues. One of the problems is in our Arkansas legislature is they let the federal government come in. If you'll read Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, that the federal government is supposed to have 4 ports and 10 miles square. That's Washington, D.C., and federal ports with permission of the state legislature. What do we have now? We have all these game preserves and God knows what else, federal forests.
Yeah, you should have heard last hour. We've got legislators wanting to have Arkansas, for tourism purposes, become dark sky designated, meaning where we regulate light trespass. It's ridiculous.
Well, and we have something like a $27 billion budget here in the state of Arkansas annually, but we only have $6 billion in taxable receipts.
Correct.
So where's that other money come from? Comes from the federal government.
Yep.
In fact, I worked on I actually try to talk to our legislators to get them to actually look at what they're doing. We had a legislator, I want to say it was a guy from Fort Smith. He kept trying to give away our state sovereignty to federal employees who carry a badge and a gun, i.e., give them the ability to go into the state of Arkansas, arrest people when they have no jurisdiction. He's trying to hand over jurisdiction.
It's unbelievable. Hey, Tony, we're gonna have to wrap this up, but I really appreciate your contribution to the program today. And you say you're in Benton County. Are you listening online? Are you listening on a radio station? How are you listening to the program today?
Online. I don't really get good radio reception.
I understand. Well, we are on in Benton County on Mondays and Fridays on KERM, 790 AM and 100.3 FM, so you can pick us up there. But online is, I think, the fastest growing part of our operation right now, so I really appreciate it. And if you'll hang on the line, I would like to send you a Liberty Machine T-shirt. Is that okay?
That'd be great.
Okay. All right. Please stay on the line. Joe's going to get your information and shirt size and everything else, and we appreciate it, Tony. Folks, before we go, I want to read this. This is from a listener, Mark, on Facebook. We mentioned dicamba in the situation the other day. And this is kind of in conjunction with several headlines that we have right now. But Mark on Facebook wrote on the Paul Harrell Facebook page, he said, a short course in dicamba today. Late last century, DuPont developed crops you could use Roundup on to kill all the weeds with affecting yields. After a few years, and quite predictably, the weeds became resistant as well. Monsanto was prepared and launched genetically modified seeds resistant to dicamba, a broadleaf-only herbicide, as opposed to kill all like a Roundup would, which farmers have recently been switching to for more effective weed control. The plant board recommended at last application date in April for dicamba. This protected other farmers while allowing Monsanto to sell dicamba. Now this, an Arkansas regulatory panel has voted to ban the use of an herbicide for part of the next year after the weed killer drew complaints from farmers across several states who say it drifted onto their crops and caused widespread damage. The Arkansas Plant Board on Wednesday approved prohibiting the use of dicamba in the state between April 16th and October 31st. The ban includes several exemptions, including for pasturing and home use, and now heads to a legislative panel. The state earlier this year approved a temporary ban on the herbicide sale and use and has received nearly 1,000 complaints this year about dicamba. The panel backed the ban after hearing from 37 people at a public hearing and said it received more than 29,000 written comments. So now Arkansas is essentially telling family farmers using Monsanto seed that if they have a contract with Monsanto, they have to honor it without getting to use dicamba. Who wins? Now, Mark on Facebook writes, DuPont, that's who. If a total ban is implemented, DuPont wins. Originally, the plant board wanted local farmers to meet and pick a last spray day, very sensibly, but picking a set date without regard for weather and region is, well, typical ASA. One-size-fits-all solutions don't work for some, but hit the sweet spot for others. Now, that is an interesting take on the situation. This story actually made the New York Times. Joe, throw the New York Times up, because not only is Arkansas dealing with Monsanto, the European Union is. From Brussels to Arkansas, a tough week for Monsanto. Opposition from France and Italy doomed a European Union vote on Thursday to reauthorize the world's most popular weed killer, glyphosate, a decision that came hours after Arkansas regulators moved to ban an alternative weed killer for much of 2018. Okay, here's the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette story. New story, headline, Arkansas Plant Board backs dicamba ban for 2018. The vote is 10-3 after 250 farmers and others hear testimony in Little Rock yesterday. Farmers will be prohibited from spraying dicamba across the top of crops during next year's growing season. Now, here's the thing on this. This is certainly something, and I go back and forth, but I definitely think there needs to be a pause if you have farmers who are spraying this stuff and it's causing damage on other crops, right? The philosophy here, in my opinion, would be your liberty ends where somebody else's begins. And this has not been without direct consequence and big-time consequences. If you go to the Arkansas Times, of course, and we covered this back in October of last year, there were two farmers, and one farmer shot the other farmer to death over accusations that dicamba had drifted onto his soybeans. Matter of fact, the victim is the cousin of State Senator Dave Wallace. Arkansas Times' David Kuhn wrote back on August 10th of this year, farmer versus farmer, the fight over the herbicide dicamba has cost one man his life and turned neighbor against neighbor in East Arkansas. And it talks about how, just listen to this. According to investigators, on October 27, 2016, Wallace, who farmed 5,000 acres of corn, soybeans, and cotton near the Arkansas-Missouri border, arranged by phone to meet a farmhand named Alan Curtis Jones, 26, of Arbird, Missouri, on West County Road 38 north of Mississippi County town of Leachville to discuss Wallace's suspicions that the farm where Jones worked was the source of drifting dicamba that had damaged some of Wallace's crops. Wallace, who had been vocal in his opposition to the herbicide, had been quoted in an August 2016 story in the Wall Street Journal telling the newspaper that at least 40% of his soybean crop had been damaged by drifting dicamba since June. He'd filed complaints twice with the Arkansas State Plant Board, the state agency that oversees claims of crop damage, about damage from drifting dicamba, and had encouraged other farmers to report the damage as well. When Wallace and Jones met outside of Leachville, Jones brought along his cousin and a gun. According to statements issued by Mississippi County Sheriff Dale Cook at the time of the shooting, Jones told investigators that an argument had ensued. In the midst of it, Wallace, who was not carrying a weapon, grabbed Jones by the arm. At that point, investigators say Jones pulled away, pulled a pistol, and fired into Wallace's body until the magazine was empty. Wallace, a father of two who'd farmed in Mississippi County since he was a boy, was hit at least 4 times and died in the dust on the south shoulder of the county road. That is unbelievable to me that happened. But here's the more ridiculous part. This case still hasn't gone to trial. It was scheduled to go to trial in March, moved to September, and now it's scheduled to go to trial in December. Joe, I wrote on the board, it says it December there on the bottom right-hand. December 11th, according to court documents, is when this is supposed to go to trial. And I am told that the family of the deceased is worried if they're ever really going to even see justice because there's been so many continuances and things like that. That's a dicamba update. Tensions are clearly high because, farmers want to farm. They also want to control weeds. But there is such a thing as dicamba drift, and it's making a lot of people upset. We got to take a break, folks. You're listening to the Paul Harrell program. Back in a moment.
This is for all you big government establishment Republicans out there. Hope you're listening. I keep a close watch on these votes of mine. I keep my finger in the wind all the time. I vote big government, and you will pay with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. There's always an excuse not to shrink government. It's much easier just to toe that line. I find it very easy to be rhino blue. I find I'm not alone when failing to come through. Yes, big government, I'm a fool for you. 'Cause every time I toe that line. Legislative sleight of hand would be an accurate description. Or you could just say, they can't quit towing that party line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I'll vote big government both day and night. And act like I'm shocked when it all comes to light. 'Cause every time I toe the line. The phrase toe the line is the equivalent of toe the mark, both of which mean to conform to a rule or standard. You could also call it the status quo. Tax and spend, I'm always on your side. I love writing government checks that I cannot hide. Buying people's votes always turns the tide. 'Cause every time I toe the line. The Oxford Dictionary word histories. The idiom toe the line, from an athletics analogy, originated in the early 19th century. I hope you don't watch these votes of mine. Hope you don't see through the lies and slime. 'Cause I plan on spending with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. Toeing the line is what the folks down in Little Rock call progress.
PHP Parody.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. We're kind of wrapping things up. Follow me on Twitter, at Paul Harrell 1776. I appreciate everybody out there watching on Facebook. Let's see here. Yeah, we have Tom on Facebook on the dicamba thing, just writing something pretty basic. When chemicals are put down, they will leach out. No brainer. Yeah, it's exactly right. Tomorrow is Johnny Cash Friday. Listen to this. If you want to give me your request, okay? You can do that on Facebook. You can do that. Just send me a text if you want. 870-275-9799. Send me your request for Johnny Cash Friday. We'll put it in our system. And that's what, you guys can help shape the lineup. How about that? Also, don't forget, if you believe this program has value and you want extra content on specific topics, you need to go to patreon.com and consider partnering with us for as little as $5 a month. And you get extra content. $5 a month, extra content. We have weekly Wednesday videos, so you get an extra video a week. And you'll get all of the back videos so far. We've only been doing this about 8 weeks, but you'll get access to 8 or 9 videos that you haven't seen yet that are only available for our Patreon subscribers. You can go up and give $10 or $25 a month for more features and content, things like that. We've got to go, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Tomorrow is Friday. Have a great one. We'll see you here at 4 o'clock for Johnny Cash Friday. Back in just back tomorrow. Sorry.